My people, Africa's favorite president right now, Captain Ibrahim Traore, the revolutionary leader who has captured the hearts and minds of people all over the world, has made a decision that's sending shockwaves through the international community. He has expelled the UN's top official in Burkina Faso after a new report accused his government of abusing children, recruiting them as soldiers, committing sexual violence, and attacking schools and hospitals. Yeah. And he's telling the United Nations it's time to pack your bags and leave. Now, on one side, critics say that this is a red flag, right? A government that's silencing criticism, shutting out international monitors, and closing the door on accountability. And on the other side, supporters are calling it a bold stand, an African nation that's refusing to be dictated to by outsiders, rejecting what they see as biased reports and asserting its sovereignty. But for Traore and for his people, when a government that's leading a massive revolution at home, rolling out groundbreaking changes and inspiring hope for a generation, is accused of something this serious, it's not just criticism. For them, it's war. Because narrative is power. And they've seen this movie before. Visionary African leaders discredited, undermined, even destroyed. Not always by bullets, but by the stories told about them. And Traore is not backing down from what he sees as a fight for the truth and for his country's future. So today we're breaking down the real reason Traore is sending the UN packing and asking the bigger question. Is this the silencing of criticism, as the critics say? Or is it Africa finally standing up for itself? We're going to break it down, but first, a big welcome to all of our new subscribers and members. I am so glad you're here with us. And if you're watching and haven't joined us yet, please consider this your personal invitation. Because here at Planet Genius TV, we're committed to not just building a channel, but creating a home for global Black stories that are told with truth, with intention, and with power. And if that speaks to you, and I hope it does, then hit subscribe, but don't just stop there. Tap the bell, drop a super thanks, or join our membership community and be a part of what we're building here. Your support helps us do what we do even better, and we appreciate it. Okay, now let's get into it. Okay, so let's quickly recap what went down. On August 18th, Burkina Faso's government made it official. The UN's resident coordinator, Carol Flore Smerexianic, and please forgive me if I chopped up that last name, but basically she is persona non grata. And in plain English, that means she is expelled. Why? It all comes back to a UN report titled Children and Armed Conflict in Burkina Faso. The report covered the period from July 2022 to June 2024 and laid out some shocking numbers. 2,483 grave violations against 2,255 children. Kids being recruited as child soldiers, cases of sexual violence, attacks on schools and hospitals. The report points the finger at both sides. Extremist groups linked to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and local defense groups aligned with the state. And Traore, he isn't having it. They dismissed the findings as unfounded and claimed that the UN didn't consult them, didn't provide evidence, and published a report that damages the country's image without context. So, with one statement, they slammed the door and told the UN's top official, it's time to go. Now, from the Traore administration's point of view, this wasn't about silencing anyone. It was about sovereignty. They argue the UN dropped a damning report without proper consultation, without solid evidence, and without considering the complexity of the fight they're in. To them, this isn't just about numbers on a page. It's about image, credibility, and control. Because remember, Burkina Faso has been battling jihadist groups that have ripped through the Sahel for more than a decade. The government insists that it's making progress, and that reports like this undermine not just their authority, but their ability to rally support at home. think about it for a second. This is a government that's in the middle of a sweeping revolution. Traore is building free healthcare systems, laying out roads through community support, investing in food and processing, pushing tech and innovation, trying to inspire hope where there was despair in his country. And when the UN accuses them of grave child rights violations, they see it as outsiders meddling, outsiders who don't live the daily reality of villages under attacks, schools under siege, or a state that's fighting for survival. For Traore's supporters, expelling the UN isn't suppression, it's self-defense. It's an African nation that's standing tall and saying, we will not be lectured, we will not be humiliated, and we will not let foreign institutions dictate our story. Now, to understand why Burkina Faso's leaders are taking this position and are very adamant about it, you got to look at the history. Because this isn't the first time African governments have accused Western institutions of undermining them through reports, sanctions, or narratives that don't tell the whole story. Think about it. For decades, international financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank dictated economic policy across Africa, policies that often collapsed local industries and left nations in debt traps. Yet those failures were blamed on African mismanagement, not on the strings attached to the loans. Well, look at leaders who try to push back. Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Patrice Lumumba of Congo, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, each in their own way challenged outside interference. And what happened? They were branded dangerous, destabilizing, or radical. Some were overthrown, others assassinated. So when Captain Traore, who has promised to lead his country into a new era of sovereignty, says these UN reports are biased, these institutions don't see us as equals, and their words can weaken our legitimacy, they're drawing from a very real history here. A history where Western institutions often had the final word, and African leaders who resisted pay the price. That's why some in Burkina Faso see this expulsion not as defiance, but as correction, as part of a larger movement of African nations saying, we will tell our own story on our own terms. But let's flip the coin. Critics see this not as sovereignty, but as silencing. And they point to a pattern that's happening in Burkina Faso. Because back in 2022, Traore's government expelled another UN representative, Barbara Manzi, after she raised concerns about instability. To critics, it's the same playbook. Every time international organizations highlight uncomfortable truths, the government pushes them out. This time, it's Carol Flore Smiregzniak. She was appointed UN resident coordinator in Burkina Faso in 2024 and also serves as the humanitarian coordinator for the United Nations in the country. Originally from Mauritius, she has more than 20 years of experience in development, security, and humanitarian work, serving in conflict and post-conflict settings across Africa and the Pacific. She's held senior roles in Côte d'Ivoire, Chad, Malawi, Papua New Guinea, and the UNDP Pacific Center in Fiji. So her credentials are quite extensive. But the Burkina Faso government again is arguing that they weren't consulted, that it relied on unfounded allegations and presented no real evidence. In their official statement, they said the report, quote, did not cite any documentation or court rulings to support the alleged cases of violations against the valiant Burkinabe fighters. So that's the two sides of the coin. But no matter how you feel about his decision, here's the truth. Captain Traore has the right to make whatever decision he feels is in the best interest of his country and his people. He is accountable to his people, not to any foreign institution. And let me just say this, okay? If Donald Trump could expel a South African diplomat from the US just for saying something he didn't like, then Traore has every right to expel a UN official he feels undermines Burkina Faso. Sovereignty works both ways. But here's the nuance, my people, because whether the findings of this report is true or not, there might have been another path, perhaps a more consultative approach. The UN could have first presented its findings directly to the government, giving them a chance to investigate and allow them to respond with facts before going public. But my people, here's the thing. This is bigger than one country. This is about Africa as a whole. Do we want Western institutions meddling in our affairs? Or do we want to build the capacity to solve our problems ourselves? Because here's what I don't understand. On one hand, some African nations call on the United Nations or on the West when crises break out, when elections go wrong, when peace deals collapse, when civil wars rage. They see those institutions as the only ones with teeth. But on the other hand, others are kicking those same institutions out, accusing them of bias, interference, and disrespect. We can't have it both ways, can we? We can't ask the UN to come in to rescue us in one breath and then slam the door on them in another. At some point, Africa has got to decide. What do we want as a continent? Where do we stand? So my people, where do we go from here, really? Africa's beloved leader has expelled the UN's top official. To some, it's suppression of criticism. To others, it's sovereignty in action. Both can be true at the same time, or maybe they can, depending on where you stand. But zoom out, and the question isn't really just about Traore or the UN. It's about Africa. Are we going to keep relying on Western institutions to referee our disputes, monitor our elections, validate our governance? Or are we going to take that responsibility into our own hands, even if that means standing alone when the spotlight turns harsh? That's the crossroads, because every expulsion, every rejection, every call for intervention, it all adds up to one defining question. What kind of relationship does Africa want with the world? So now I turn it over to you, my people. Was Burkina Faso right to show the UN the door? Or was this a dangerous step that leaves vulnerable people without protection? And bigger than that, do you think Africa should keep calling on outside institutions? Or finally build the muscle to solve our own problems? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's have this conversation together.